Hello, Dianne. Welcome to the podcast. We're so excited to have you.
Hey, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, can you kind of give us an intro of who you are and what it is that you do?
I'm Dianne Kosto, the founder and CEO of SYMMETRY Neuro-Pathway training, and I'm a mom on a mission. I got into the field looking for answers for my son, who was impulsive off the charts and got kicked out of every different school environment that exists. And Neuro-Pathway training is basically neurofeedback. It's just kind of our term for it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's so cool. And I love that you're like, I'm a mom on a mission, right? Those are usually the best kind of business ventures of like, hey, there's this problem for my child. I want to find a solution. So I am going to find a solution, which is awesome. I love that. And so we met your colleague, Jan, at a NatSap conference that we recently attended, and she kind of told us about this cool device, how the neural pathways work. And so can you maybe outline that a little bit and explain to parents who might be listening how that can help their child, especially if they maybe have like a neurodiverse child, and how this will help with all of that?
Sure, absolutely. So it's technology-driven learning, and we're focused on the brain and brainwave patterns. So what we do is we'll have the person, whether it's a kid or an adult, fill out some biopsychosocial intake assessments, and then we'll actually map the brainwave activity in the brain. And that takes putting a snug cap on your head. It kind of looks like a swim cap. People are seeing more images of it probably online now because there's a little more talk about neurofeedback. But it starts with that, measuring what exactly is going on in that individual's brain, what areas of the brain are functioning well and which areas may not be regulated. And once we have that information, then through the software, we can set a protocol for what that brain needs to learn in order to better regulate. So it might just be increasing fast wave activity over on the left side or reducing some slow wave activity in the frontal lobes. And it really depends on that individual. Software does the work though. The brain and the software communicate the whole time they're doing these sessions. You just have a couple sensors on the scalp measuring the brainwave activity. That's the neuro part. And the feedback is they may be watching anything online that you can stream, Netflix, YouTube, Hulu, and the software puts an overlay over top of it so that it'll play a little bit brighter and louder when the brain's meeting a healthy pattern, and it goes dimmer and quieter when the brain's not producing a pattern. And so it's rewarding the brain by allowing you to see it or hear it better, right? So naturally, when you wake up in the morning, your eyes start to focus and start to tune in and listen to things. If you hear whispers, you can't help it. Your brain starts to tune into that. So when it goes soft or dimmer, the brain does what it has to do to produce that brighter or louder. That's what the software is constantly communicating. And then it's like learning to ride a bike or write with a pencil. You practice, and pretty soon you're doing it without thinking about it. So there are new pathways created in the brain. Learning.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's
How often does somebody do this? So the process, it sounds like they put on the cap after everything's mapped. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, we prefer now when people are coming into the office, we always recommend it 2 to 3 times a week, but we have mobile systems now. So we can send this into homes for families no matter where they are. And they don't have to worry about all that travel time going to an office, scheduling an hour appointment, traveling back, sitting in traffic, and they're doing it at home. And we just coach them through. Most people can do it daily or even twice a day. It's just like practicing a musical instrument. The more you do it, the quicker your brain's going to learn. So, and we have coaches that are in constant contact with the people that have these systems at home. We don't just send them out there and let you be on your own. So we'll walk you through and we can see what your brain is doing and if you can handle increasing that time. So I kind of love it when somebody can do it daily because, we're the quick fix magic pill society.
Yeah.
So doing something once or twice a week can drag on for people. And I love seeing the results that we're getting with like a 6-week intensive.
That's so cool. And so, yeah, you mentioned this kind of came about because you were trying to help your son's impulsivity and all of that. So what were kind of the results you saw from putting him through this program, and what successes has he seen?
So he really was so impulsive that he got kicked out of different school environments. I mean, private school, homeschool, boarding school, homeschool again, military academy. And he was at the end of his options. I mean, he was just 12 going on 13. he was in a therapeutic program for, quote unquote, troubled teens. So his came across as, but most people just kind of pegged him as 110% boy with a bad attitude, because he put up that tough guy front, even though he's hurting inside because he's getting kicked out and labeled. And, I'm constantly kind of trying to be very firm with him because I was a single parent, thinking, I'm being judged, that I'm not going to toe the line and everything with these boys. I had 2 boys. But what happened with him was, once I actually went through the training, I was introduced to the founder of a Neurofeedback company right when we were running out of options. And that guy said, that's the kind of kid we can help. So I went through the training and set it up in that program. And I started running the sessions on him. And so he started to, one of the first things I noticed was the dark circles under his eyes were lightening up a little bit. So apparently he was sleeping better, even though nobody would have known. He might not have been. And then he started to kind of lighten up a little and maybe participate in a couple of the elements of the program. He started to gain his self-confidence back. And one of the best things was that spark in his eye coming back, But overall, 40 sessions, and he gained that pause before reacting that he never really had since birth. And then he was able to apply all of the things that he learned from all of the different programs, and to stop and think about a choice and a decision that he was making. He wasn't the perfect kid after that. He was still a teenager, and we continued to fight and battle it out. And he made choices that I didn't approve of. But then I knew those were his choices now. They weren't just him reacting to his environment. He had a physical reason in his brain that he wasn't able to pause before reacting. And we were able to correct that. He's now one of the most disciplined people I know.
That is a cool story.
Awesome. Yeah.
He literally just had his first and only graduation last summer at age 25. And he's an Army Special Forces Green Beret.
Oh, wow.
That
takes a lot of discipline.
He went from one of those people that would be locked up or accidentally have killed themselves to literally being one of the most disciplined people in the world. And, think about how many other kids and adults, might have been on that same path that he is. And so our mission is really, this should be available to everyone, every household. It should just be part of our society. If we can better regulate our brains, we're going to get along with people better. We're going to make different choices. So we're doing everything we can to help people have access to this neurofeedback.
Yeah, that's so cool. And there's so much that goes into like the science of the brain, right? That it controls everything. It controls our bodies, our mood, all the things, right? And so the training it, and I'm curious because, there's so many things out there that are like, there's OCD, there's ADHD, there's epilepsy, there's all these kind of neurological things that are affecting kids. And so have you seen success with things like OCD, ADHD, or even epilepsy using this program?
Yeah, we really haven't. There's a lot of research out there, and I'm not a big fan of all of the labels, but we do have them, and that was one of the most fascinating things when I showed up at that program. I didn't really believe in ADHD and ODD and all of those things, but I showed up there and I started looking at their brainwave activity. And I didn't even have the full mapping. I only had one sensor there, and we were looking at these patterns, and I saw that they all had similar dysregulated patterns. So and I had this control group there, right? All of these kids that couldn't function in a typical public school and even homeschool and some of the other programs that ended up there. And the common factor was brain was not communicating properly. It was dysregulated. So and the study started back in the 60s when they founded neurofeedback. If you Google neurofeedback for epilepsy, seizures, that was one of the first things they helped people with. And then the research just goes from there, ADHD. And honestly, what I've seen a ton of, regardless of what people think they're coming to us for, we see patterns of anxiety. That has definitely skyrocketed. Even before the pandemic, we started seeing more and more patterns of anxiety. So that lends to the question, why? Is it our technology keeping us in hypervigilant mode? Probably. Diet, stress levels. Yeah.
Absolutely. All of the things, a combination of all of those things for sure.
Right.
That's 100%. So I'm curious, before meeting you guys, I was familiar more so with TMS. How is what you guys do different than that, or is it similar?
TMS it uses a low level of magnetic stimulation into the brain. And there are other neurofeedbacks out there trying to kind of do that, push a little current through there to help better regulate the brain. The version that we use is strictly technology driven learning. So I don't have to have a medical degree. It's not invasive. It's using that technology to allow the brain to learn as it's ready. So TMS is now, there's some money involved in that, and they were able to get the equipment and some insurance coverage and everything. My understanding is that it can help with depression pretty quickly. I don't know how lasting the results are, but I guess the concept is similar, to try to help the brain better regulate.
Yeah.
The different
Yeah.
approach.
So you guys work with individual families, you work with people who are interested in being a provider of this. Right now, our main audience is going to be families, not necessarily people that would be wanting to provide this to others. So how accessible is this to families? Is this something where most middle-class families could afford this, or is this something that could be insurance-based? Is this something that, people can maybe get grants for or money for to help with? Like, how does it work as far as being accessible to families?
I think the mixture of what you just mentioned, there are some states there's coverage with the remote and the mobile. I think there's more openings to that since the pandemic. More people are, more accepting of it and allowing some allowances, but insurance really isn't, and big pharma is not a big supporter of neurofeedback right now, not yet. I think it is affordable though for most middle-class families. I mean, in light of like what I was going through, trying to find help for my son and going into debt and putting them in schools that I could not afford, we're a fraction of that for sure, or long-term copays on medications.
Yeah.
So it's pretty accessible because we have a conversation with someone, we set those expectations, we can talk to them about the pricing. It's only $600 for the initial intake and the mapping, and 6 weeks of unlimited use is $2,997. So that really is not that much when you're looking at it for somebody that really needs that help.
Big picture. Yeah. Long term.
Yeah. And it's just, a couple sensors and an amplifier and the software and our supervision that's involved in it. So the technology has definitely shrunken even in the 13 years that I've been doing this.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that there's kind of those at-home options. And so if someone were to sign up for this 6-week program, I'm assuming you just ship them the equipment, and then after the 6 weeks, they just ship it back, or how does that work?
Yeah. And we decide, it depends on their goals, and their schedule. Some people, they're fine. Like my son, he had 40 sessions and he was good to go. He's a whole different person. But other people, if there's more complex or they're on more medications, we need more time as they reduce those medications. Traumatic brain injury, something like that. It really depends on your goals, because we also have peak performers. There are Olympic athletes, business people that use this on a regular basis because they can feel better, and to counteract the stressors of our society. So it's really per case and what their goals are. Just work with them along the way and find the best fit.
How often do you use it? How often do you
Probably not
use it?
often enough. It's funny. I go through, and it's really helped me a lot. It's interesting. My sleep cycle was so bad most of my life, and I developed an autoimmune disease and fibromyalgia and all this kind of nightmare stuff. And when I did, it took a lot of sessions. It took maybe 60 to 80 sessions, and my sleep cycle is totally restored, and I'm healing from that. So I go through phases where I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do this every day. I'll do like an hour, 2 hours in a sitting for a week or two. And then I'm off traveling at conferences or something, and I get out of the habit. But anytime I feel pretty disrupted, I'm hooking myself up. If I'm going to kick back and watch Netflix, it might as well be training my brain.
Yeah. So does it matter what you watch? Really?
It really doesn't, because the software will put an overlay over top of it. And the effect will be, what it is. Those people, you don't want to watch something super emotional for a lot of people, or that's going to trigger some type of trauma. You want to, watch something that's kind of you're interested in, it's engaging, but it's not going to be offensive and upsetting to you.
Yeah. Kind of your unwind time, but also be productive, because then you're training your brain instead of kind of just zoning out and not getting anything out of it.
Yeah, it can be too boring though. Like I've had early on, people really were asking that. And I went to the school that I was at, there were a lot of boys like my son, and they wanted to watch things like Rocky and Miracle and the boy films, and there's violence in them, but if it's not traumatizing for them and they're kind of used to that, I mean, I'd rather have them come in there and watch that than fight to come in there because they're being forced to watch a nature documentary or something that they are going to sleep, so I kind of find that balance of keeping them engaged. And like my Navy SEAL that I had dealt with, there was no way that I was going to put something calm in there for him, because he was used to always having something like that too, that it was engaging. And I find myself too, I have to watch like something like a cooking competition, or I'm zoned out. I'm like something competitive and interesting. Yeah.
There you go. Too funny. So sleep helps with sleep. Maybe this is something I need to look into, because that seems to be
that's one of the first things that's disrupted. Did you notice like at a certain time where it became disrupted, or was it just gradually?
Kind of gradually, I would say. Like, I feel like I used to sleep well as a teenager, and then, life happens, you get more responsibilities, and it's just, you don't find yourself sleeping as well, and you wake up and your mind's racing, and, all those type of things.
Yeah. And then you cognitively, you can't really, function at your best when you're not sleeping well. It's really all tied together. So, but that is one of the things we always will track, is the sleep cycle. Because it's amazing. And a lot of people maybe think they sleep well because they fall asleep as soon as they hit the pillow, and but sometimes that's not really the restorative sleep cycles that they need throughout the night. So
Yeah, for
start
sure.
to better regulate the brain, that balances the whole central nervous system and can really get that restorative sleep that we need, which is different than just crashing as soon as your head hits the pillow.
Yeah, for sure. You have to reach those deeper cycles of
REM. And with the anxiety too, I really see that was so interesting, because even adults come to me with ADHD. I'm coming here because I have ADHD. I need to focus better. And we do a map, and I show them, okay, you really have patterns of anxiety in your brain. And no, I'm not anxious. I handle things pretty well. I've got my spirituality. I have my routine. I don't feel anxious or worry about anything, I'm like, okay, but we're going to better regulate the brain as a whole. We're not going to just, fix some diagnosis or one symptom. We want the brain as a whole to better regulate. So we just kept doing our thing with her. And she was a businesswoman. And, eventually she came in and she was like, wow, my stomach didn't flip-flop the other day when such and such happened in the office. And I was like, interesting. But for her, that was her norm. She didn't know that it was anxiety because it was always with her. And until it started to go away, then she recognized maybe that is what they call anxious.
Interesting.
It was pretty fascinating. And then, of course, her focus and attention started to come online.
Yeah.
And settled that pattern out.
Interesting. Well, and so I'm curious, you mentioned it's, technology driven, and I know there's some people out there who, for whatever reason, maybe don't like watching Netflix or Hulu or something, but maybe they're into podcasts or audiobooks. Does it also kind of integrate with that, to where, hey, I'm training my brain, but I can't hear my audiobook, so then I can regulate the patterns to hear my book?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And we do quite a bit of eyes closed training where they're just listening to something too.
Okay.
They're comfortable in that setting. So audible books and podcasts are great for things like that. TED Talks, whatever they're interested in and they want to learn.
Okay, that's cool. I like that it appeals to kind of all the different learning styles as well, because some are visual, some are auditory.
Right.
Yeah. That's great.
So I do have a question about the mapping. You mentioned, okay, it's 600 or whatever it is for the mapping. do some people just come to you to get mapped to see what's going on and then don't choose to do the 6-week or however long program? Or is it pretty much like, have you noticed that once people see what's going on with the brain, they're like, okay, sign me up?
Yeah, that's really it. I mean, we have sold maps and then people decided not to go forward, but not very frequently. It's usually, and goes hand in hand, because when you can see something measurable that backs what you've been struggling with, then it makes sense, and people see, okay, there really is a physical reason why I struggle with anxiety or irritability, anger, worry, ruminating, all of those things. When we can show them something concrete and measurable in their system as to why they're struggling with that, gives them a lot of hope, and they usually understand the concept, to proceed. Because we don't just use it to diagnose. We're using it to figure out what we need to do to help that brain better regulate.
That makes sense. That's cool.
That is really cool. Awesome. Well, for maybe some of our parents listening, thinking, oh, hey, this would help my child's fill in the blank, right? Where can they find you and get some information to do the mind mapping and the SYMMETRY training?
The website is great. There's some research on there and videos that kind of explain it. If they go down into the bottom in the resources, there's a button they can click on there and schedule an appointment to talk with us. We always want to have that conversation with someone first to make sure we set the expectations. They've got the right time frame and realistic, expectations for it. So they can schedule that appointment on the website. It's SYMMETRYNeuropt.com. SYMMETRY Neuro, P as in pathway, T as in training.com. And they can call 1-844-BRAIN-ON.
Brain on. I like that.
Awesome.
1-844-BRAIN-ON and talk to us there too.
Love it.
You can text that number as well.
Okay, cool.
We'll
Well,
put that in the show notes for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Awesome. Well, anything else you would like to share with parents about how this works or how it could potentially help their child?
Well, I like people to understand, and I think I've said it a lot, that it's about better regulating the brain. I mean, we do have people that come to us with certain diagnoses and things that they're struggling with. That's usually when they find us because they've been searching for help. But keep in mind that this can be used just to fine tune and for peak performance too. I don't like the stigmas and, there has to be something wrong with you to help better regulate your brain. Like I said, we want this to be a household thing. We all can benefit from it. We're using technology to maybe not necessarily help ourselves. Let's start using it to help ourselves too, and to counterbalance the negative aspects of other technology. So that's what I like.
For sure. Love it. Awesome. Well, we will include, the website, the phone number in the show notes. So parents, if any of you are interested in that for yourself or your family, definitely check it out. It's super fascinating. I'm sure we could talk about this for hours and hours about just the pathways of the brain and how it all works and connects. But we appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today, Dianne. Thank you for
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dianne.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.